A lot of head scratching going on there. Thanks, Miranda. Well, American companies are reincorporating overseas. You've probably heard about this, to lower their tax bills. It's a trend that even the U.S. Treasury Secretary is concerned about and wants to end. But will Congress listen? Joining me right now to further discuss this topic in depth is Chris Chocola, president of Club for Growth, a group dedicated to promoting public policies that encourage high growth for the U.S. economy. Chris, as always, it's great to talk to you, and thanks for joining us on America's Forum.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, my first question to you is, tell us what's going on with these companies and how this is possible, where they can simply maybe buy a foreign company, flip-flop everything upside down, and then reincorporate in a foreign country.
Well, the technical term for it is tax inversion. What these companies are trying to compete on a global marketplace, and they're trying to compete against companies that have a much lower tax burden, and therefore their overall costs are lower, so they're more competitive. So it's just math. It's just trying to compete in the reality of today's marketplace, which is global. And so they're trying to find a way to be able to lower their tax burden. They can't get the Congress to engage in meaningful tax reform, which would be one of the most pro-growth things we could do for our country, create the most jobs and economic growth, I think, of any kind of policy issue that we could think of. So they buy foreign companies, and they basically move their headquarters to the company they purchased outside the United States. And it's a trend that so Secretary Lew accused these CEOs or these companies of being unpatriotic. I think the only unpatriotic thing is running these people out of the country and running the jobs out of the country. I mean, Joe Manchin's West Virginia senator, Democrat, his own daughter runs a pharmaceutical company, and she just did this. And her point was, she says you can't maintain an uncompetitive situation. You just can't do it. The odds are just not in your favor, she says, to be able to stay in business. So it's just a practical thing these companies have to do to survive, and they can't get the attention of the United States Congress or this president to engage in meaningful tax reform that would help keep them here, grow the jobs, and grow the economy.
Well, we're showing on the screen right now a recent op-ed from the Wall Street Journal here. I wanted to ask you, Chris, how long this is going on, because this particular op-ed we're showing on the screen right now blames the president and his administration for this mushrooming problem.
Well, we've had an uncompetitive tax code for longer than this president has been in office. That's for sure. But President Obama has said, and there have been moments where he sounds sincere, that he would like to engage in meaningful tax reform, including corporate tax reform. Chairman Dave Camp, chairman of Ways and Means, has offered substantive legislation proposals that would be a big step in the right direction, but unfortunately the administration and the Democrats in the Senate aren't willing to work with him to be able to pursue that. So, while we have the partisanship going on in Washington, we have companies trying to survive by doing this tax inversion maneuver that just simply allows them to compete. And it's not that they have anything other than the interest of their customers, their employees, and their shareholders in mind. The CEOs have a duty to do that, and they're fulfilling their duty.
And that's fair enough. Their first, I guess, obligation is to the shareholders of their corporations here. But what do you think needs to be done, Chris? I guess obviously lowering the corporate income tax rate, which, as you mentioned, is the highest in the world right now. But is there other measures that need to happen right now that Congress needs to act on quickly, like allowing some of these corporations to bring their money back into this country tax-free?
Yeah, they've done that before. They have a tax holiday. They allow companies to bring their offshore profits back home at a reduced tax rate. I think that would be a good short-term step to do. It just simply brings back a lot of capital into the United States that's sitting offshore, just because it would be penalized so severely if we bought it home. So, it's just common sense. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people in Washington that have actually been in business, have actually dealt with these realities of trying to compete in a global marketplace. And so they just simply play politics with it rather than look at the objective, most constructive steps we can take. But having a short-term tax holiday in the absence of overall tax reform would be a good step.
Now, I guess some folks could argue that we see this crisis, this immigration crisis playing out on our border, but this inversion issue could be considered a crisis by some as well. Maybe I'm overstating things here a little bit, but if the border crisis, which is very visual and it's affecting Americans every single day, especially in those border communities, if Congress can't seem to get things worked out on that, we have this issue of corporate tax reform, which has been always a tough nut to crack in the past. Is there any optimism coming from you, Chris, that there's going to be anything done substantial on corporate tax reform anytime soon?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is no. I don't think that there's going to be anything meaningful done or substantial done from a legislative standpoint between now and the election. It seems like it's always an election year, but
right,
Congress really doesn't want to take risks during election years, especially this close to the election. So the only hope we have is that Republicans pick up the Senate and they maintain the House, and they formulate really, I hope, based on Dave Camp's kind of proposal, real tax reform. And then they send it over to the White House, and we'll see what the president does and whether he's sincere in his offer to engage in fundamental tax reform. But that's the only hope, that Republicans actually have a majority in both the House and the Senate, and that President Obama is willing to work with them.
Well, they have one of the houses. They have the House of Representatives. The Senate is still in question, but looking favorable for the Republicans to pick up here. Post 2014, the day after the November elections this year coming up, if the GOP does take back the Senate, what priority should tax reform be on their list of priorities in bills they sponsor over there in the upper chamber?
Well, I mean, it's pretty fundamental. I think they have to broaden the base and lower the rates. They have to bring down marginal rates for corporations and individuals. They have to eliminate a lot of the tax credits, loopholes, deductions, and just we're not advocating a flat tax, but certainly a flatter tax code with probably fewer brackets and a tax code that treats everyone fairly and the same, and let markets decide who succeeds and who doesn't. So, like I said, I think it would be the most pro-growth step from a legislative standpoint we could take. We could help our economy pick up where it's been stagnant for a long, long time now, and make America the most competitive place to do business again, and see these companies bringing their headquarters and their jobs and their profits back to the United States. It's, like I said, it's not really an ideological situation. It's not a partisan situation. It's just the reality of the global marketplace, and the sooner we focus on that, the better off we'll be.
And a little wonkish for some who don't tune into politics, but incredibly important, as you alluded to right there in your previous response to my question. Chris, I also want to talk to you real quickly about 2014 and this election here. I know you guys support several candidates. Still some issues out there. The Mississippi race remains unresolved, I guess you could say, in the eyes of some here. Also the Georgia Senate primary coming up here. Give us your take right now on some of the candidates you guys are supporting, and maybe the most interesting race, Senate, House, otherwise, that you're taking a look at this year.
Well, we're still involved in 3 Senate races. We're supporting Dan Sullivan in Alaska, and he's running against
Mark Begich.
Senator Begich. Now, there's a primary there still, but we've supported a Republican primary. We supported Dan Sullivan. We feel good about his chances in this primary, and we feel good about his chances in the general election and pickup. Tom Cotton in Arkansas running against Mark Pryor, the Democrat, in the general election. Tom Cotton's already the nominee. We think that's a good chance for a pickup as well. And then Ben Sass in Nebraska, who won his primary, has a very good chance of winning as well. So there's 3 new members of the pro-growth caucus in the Senate, we think, in 2015 when a new Congress is sworn in. And so what we do at the Club for Growth is try to find champions of economic freedom that we can support and grow the pro-growth caucus in the House and the Senate, because the only way you get pro-growth policy like tax reform is to get pro-growth lawmakers that are willing to stand up and fight for it, and those are 3 that we think are certainly willing or worth the investment that we and our members have made.
And something that you worked on when you served in the House of Representatives as well. We had your website up on the screen a few moments ago. Let's put that back up for folks at home if they want to go and take a closer look at some of the candidates that Chris Chocola, president of Club for Growth, just mentioned. They can get a closer inspection of these candidates and why the Club for Growth thinks they will be better for our economy. That's on the website we have on the screen. Chris Chocola, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Interesting take here. And everybody at home, make sure get on board with this idea of tax reform. It's not easy to talk about, a little complicated, but very important when we have a number of corporations leaving our country just because of a loophole in the tax code. Chris Chocola from Club for Growth was with us here on the program. Great to talk to him as well. A great day here so far on America's Forum, and much more information to come here on the program today. We're going to continue to take a look at some of the most salient issues of the day, and we're also going to talk about a candidate out in California, a Republican who is both gay and pro-choice. Could this guy stand a chance of making it to Washington, D.C., and what kind of reception would he expect if he does get elected? An interesting race taking place in San Diego, California. We'll talk about that ahead here on America's Forum, but much more to come as well. We're back right after this short commercial break.